So what we'll do in this episode is we'll create a controller for our albums CRUD, and we're also going to set up 4 different routes for it. If we scroll down here, we'll see the 4 different routes that we're going to create: an index route, an add route, an edit route, and a delete route. So we can see that we're going to be creating a RESTful interface here for dealing with our albums. And if I just go over to another browser tab here, we'll see what the URL structure of these is going to be. If I have skeleton.dev/album, this is going to show the collection of all the different albums. So we don't need anything after this. If we go to this URL, we should be able to see all of our different albums. And we can also put /edit/1. So this is going to be the route for editing an album. So when we're editing an album, we're going to need the verb of what we're going to do, and that's edit. And then the third parameter is going to need to be the ID of the album that we want to edit. And it's sort of the same deal with delete. The verb is delete, and we also need the ID of the album that we want to delete. However, if we want to create a new album, we're not going to need a third parameter. We can just add something like add right here, or you could also have create, because after you create a new album, it is going to have the ID assigned to it automatically in the database. So this is the RESTful structure for dealing with any kind of resource, whether it's albums, songs, students, anything like that. So that's what we're going to be covering in this tutorial. So we're just going to go through these things one by one, and that is going to be the whole content for this video. So if we scroll down here, we'll see a file that we were working with earlier, which is module.config.php. And this is the main configuration file for our module that we're creating. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy this router bit right here, everything there except for the comment above it. And we're going to go over to our text editor here, and I'm going to go into my skeleton folder, and then within module, and then we're going to go into our album module, and then within that config, and then open up module.config.php. And after the first controller's index of this array we're returning, I'm just going to paste this below that. So you should have comma and then router, and we're just pasting that in there. So we can see it's pretty complicated creating routes within Zend, but it also gives you a lot of control over the way it works. If we go down here to this route element right here, to this route index, we'll see that it's set to a string, and the string is really like a regular expression. We have /album, so because this /album is not within these square brackets, it's mandatory. So it's going to be mandatory to have /album. And then after that, we have another / within square brackets. So because that's within square brackets, that's optional to put that in or not. And then after that, we have the action within square brackets. This is preceded with a colon, but basically what's going to be put in here is something like edit or delete or anything else like that. And then finally, another optional parameter, which is the ID. This is obviously going to be an integer. So if we look a bit further down here within the constraints, we'll see the rules that we've set for this action parameter here and this optional ID parameter. So if somebody were to put something in for the action, so after album / if they put in an action like edit, we have some constraints for what they can put in there. We'll see that the first character should be a letter. It should be a small letter or a big letter. And that after that, we have another set of square brackets. And after that, we should have a small letter, a big letter, or a number, or an underscore, or a dash. And then we have a star after that. And if I'm not mistaken, regular expressions, that means we should have 0 or more of these characters. So we should at least have one character here, and then we should have 0 more of these characters, dash, underscore, number, etc. And we also have some constraints for the ID. We see the ID should be 0 to 9, so it should be a number, and has a plus after that. And the plus means that there should be 1 or more of this integer. So let's go back over to the documentation now and see what's the next thing that we need to do. So it gives us a preview here of what our routes are supposed to look like. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to create the controller, and the name for our controller is going to be albumcontroller.php. So I'm just going to copy all of this right here, and let's go back over to our text editor, and we're going to create this within src/album/controller. So let's go over to the text editor, and within my module, within album, you can see the controller one right here. So I'm just going to do a control click in Sublime. We'll do a new file here, and I'm going to paste all of that within here, and we're going to name it. Let's just do a control A here. We're going to name this album controller.php and save. So if we take a look at what we have here, we have 4 different actions: index action, add action, edit action, and delete action. And I've done a little bit of testing with this prior to this tutorial, and it seems so far that these method names are being parsed. So what it's going to do is Zend itself is actually going to parse this index action, and what it's going to expect is it's going to expect index within that URL. So we can test that later, but I think it should have nothing, or it should have index for that main list of the different albums. And then for the other ones like add, it should have add / the number, edit / the number, or sorry, add doesn't need a number after it, but edit / the ID, and then delete / the ID. But we'll do a little bit of testing on that just to see if it conforms to that. And if we put something else like gibberish / ID, whether that gives us 404 or whether the page shows. So we've got that created now, so let's go back over to the site here. So if we go down a little bit more here, just some information about the URLs. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to create the different views for this. So within view album, we're going to create these 4 different files: index.phml, add.phml, and edit and delete. So let's go ahead and create those now, and we'll also put a little bit of text in each of them. So when we test them in the browser, we'll be able to get some feedback of whether it's working or not. So just right click here on the album folder within the other album folder. So we'll name this first file as index.html, or sorry, index.phtml. I guess that stands for PHP HTML. We'll save that. And within here, I'm going to put some h1 tags, and I'm just going to type index. And I'm going to use this file just to create the other ones. So I'll just do a Command-Shift-S there. And this next one we'll call add.phtml. And we'll just change this to add right here. And let's also do one for edit. Change that to edit. And let's do one for delete. Delete.phtml. And we'll change the text within here to delete. So what we've done so far in this tutorial is within the config folder in module.config.php, we've added this route for our albums application we're creating. We've also added the album controller. It just has these 4 empty methods within it. And then within the album folder, we've added 4 files: add, delete, edit, and index.phtml. So let's go over to the browser now and let's test these out. The first thing we're just going to test is the main route right here for our collection. So I've just put in skeleton/album, and we see the index right here, so that's working fine. Once this application is created, we'll be able to see all of our albums here. So just /album is going to show the collection. And what we can test after that is album/add. And this is going to be the page where we create our new albums. So this is working just fine. And the next one that I want to test is album/edit/ the ID. Let's do 1. That's working fine. But what I want to test about this one is I want to test this without the 1 on it. So we should always be editing one of the albums, and we should provide the ID after it. So let's just remove the 1 there. And we see we get a 404 error. And I think this is the behavior that you would want. If somebody's going to edit an album, they need to provide the ID of it, or we'll get a 404 error like we did just now. And it should be the same case with delete. If we put in delete without an ID, we should get a 404 error, and we do. However, if we wanted to delete a particular album and we put 1, 2, 3 after this, then we'll get to the delete page. So we can see that all of those routes work quite well, and they passed our initial testing. So what we're going to cover in the next tutorial is we're going to actually put some data into our database. We're going to seed it with some basic data of some albums, and we're also going to create some models.